Hey folks! A lot happened this week, eh? Indeed they did, but don't you worry, because your boy is here to talk a little bit too much about this episode of Beastars, episode 10. I'll chase you to the ends of the earth, fuzzball. What a title that is. But before we get into it though, I do want to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter, and buckle up because this is going to be a lot. Eric the Wolfie, Darkfire Player 4, Berserker Vivo, Egocentrical, Leoba Nova, Fengo, Foxton2X, Bruno Schaefer 814, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boop, This Furry Boy, Orion Supergan, Nacho Gashardo, Anakido Art, Lewis Queer, Helix Log, Jackson the Bung, Firespeed 76, Toby Grey Muzzle, Deep Not That Deep, Crouch Easeloff, Silverback 088, That Circle, Stilgar Taken, Invisi Arctic Wolf, The Grand Nil, Michaela T, and Cuzzy Who's Asia. Thank you all so much for sharing last week's video over on Twitter. As you can see though, the shoutouts are getting just a tad bit out of hand, so going forward, I've made the decision to do shoutouts in the videos for the first 10 people who share that week's video, and that's going to be going across the board for all videos on the channel, and I'm not doing that because I'm trying to be mean or anything. It's just that it's getting to the point where it's almost getting silly, the amount of shoutouts in the video. So I'm going to be shouting out the first 10 people. I'll still retweet like if you do share the video, I'll always retweet it. It's just the first 10 are going to show up in the video. So I hope that's cool. I'm really sorry about that. It's kind of getting a little bit out of hand. You have no idea how many takes it took to get that in one shot. And if you would like to be one of the good folks who get their name shouted out in next week's video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. But enough about Twitter, we don't want to talk about that, we want to talk about Beastars, and oh my goodness! I'm trying to think about where I even want to start this week's video, because there's a lot. Like, I shouldn't say a lot. Stuff happens, certainly, but, it's more just the fact that the emotions that are here are a lot. And I'm not super sure. I guess, you know what, we'll start with Louis, since I feel like Louis' scene feels the most disconnected to everything that's going on. He's still connected, but his scene is the most, not involved with everything else that's going on. So we'll talk about Louis first. And Louis sort of regretting things during his talk with Juno did strike me as an honest moment for him. I do feel like Louis has some regrets about how things not only went down with Haru, of course he does, but also with Legosi. You can tell that he's worried about him. It's not just Haru that he's now concerned about, never seeing again, it's also Legosi. And I think that's because he cares about Legosi. Even though they fought, it wasn't, out of pure hatred. He doesn't, he was upset about the situation, and I feel like he's just as upset with himself as he is with the situation as a whole. I was mad, I'm not gonna lie. Watching the episode, I'm like, Louis, you sleaze, you're complacent. But at the same time, a lot of people were right to bring up, what was he supposed to do? And that's fair. Louis is not Legosi, he's not a big wolf, he's a deer. He is a stag though, so he's a proud deer, And I feel like a lot of people like me were at first wanting Louis to do anything, to step up in some way. But when you're up against something so corrupt and so dangerous, it could be difficult. That's easier said than it is done. And when it comes to characters like Legosi, he obviously has the strength to back up his mouth. And so it's easier for him to just go ahead and charge the Shishigumi because it's less, he actually has the capability of doing so. Whereas if Louis tried that, it'd be significantly more difficult. Louis is not a chump. He is a badass in his own right, and we've seen that while he's on stage and stuff, but we also know that his leg isn't exactly in the best shape. So it's not it's not impossible to assume that while Louis may have put up a decent fight against one of the lions, he'd still go down. Not only are they lions, they're really badass criminal lions. So yeah, I don't really think Louis would stand much of a chance. So I can only be so mad, but I did kind of want Louis to do something in regards to helping Haru in some way, but instead he just kind of hangs back with the other classmates as the rain comes in to make it really dramatic, and Juno approaches him saying so we gonna talk about what the hell just happened? And Louis like, no. It's a good moment, and I'm starting to like Juno and Louis, not as a ship. I just like their dynamic. I don't ship it. I just think they're they're growing on me, those two, as a bro TP possibly. That could, but it's Beastars, so I can never fully predict where things are gonna go. I just think that, like, Juno being so concerned about Legosi, and Louis also being concerned about Legosi but not wanting to show it on the outside, it kind of makes their dynamic fun. And I do appreciate that the two of them got screen time in an episode that is very much not focused on them, but their scene was still very poignant, and I do feel important to the episode as it shows what the other characters, what our other like main cast are doing during the big storm the castle episode. Like what are the characters who aren't storming the castle up to? And I thought that they really did really well with that scene. And again, it makes me feel for Louis. I do feel bad that I have to like be mad at my boy, but at the same time, I feel like he'll bounce back and be a stronger character from this. And I do appreciate that. I can't remember which of the students it was, but one of the students is like, "Have you seen Louis' face?" They like clearly pointing out like, dude's got a black eye the size of like a goose egg on his friggin' face. So everybody's just like, "Shut up, Hillary! Shut up, dude! Shut up!" It was really, really funny. Yeah, again, I like that scene. It's probably the most disconnected scene in the episode, since it, again, doesn't really have a whole ton to do with the storming the castle bit of the episode. But I still felt like it was worth noting and worth bringing up, because I do feel like it was a good scene, and I'm just glad Louis and Juno got some screen time in this episode, because the rest of the episode is very much not about them, but it's also very much badass. And I do mean that. This is the most badass episode of Beastars yet. Like Itagaki just went, she went full tilt, like insane. Let's throw fists, let's throw hands. Like that's what happens this week's episode. I can see a little bit of Keisuke coming out of Haru in this episode. A little bit of Baki, like a little bit of grappling in this episode, and I approve. And if we're gonna talk about badasses, we have to talk about Gohin like right away, because like Panda, I love that that Legosi doesn't say Gohin-sama or like Gohin-sensei or Gohin-san or anything like that. It's just Panda. Like God damn it, Legosi, come on, my boy. That's Gohin. You show that man some damn respect. He's basically Solid Snake as a panda. And also a little bit of Daryl Dixon because he got a crossbow. Gohin's just the friggin', he really, like he is, anytime Gohin's in an episode from now on, I'm going to assume badass things are like right around the corner. Because in this episode, it's like, we start with like Legosi like trying to find Haru, like finding any sign of Haru. He's running around the black market asking about the Shishigumi, and people are obviously like, yikes. Just like try to avoid having to answer Legosi at all. They just like walk away instead of answering him. And then you get those two, what were they, hyenas? I wasn't super clear on what animal they were, but they kind of pull like Legosi into a back alley and try to rob him, and they were like, hey man, if you're gonna go to the Shishigumi and die, you may as well give us your pelt or something, because we could sell it. So they're basically just being like really nefarious dudes. And then there's Gohin with the save. Keep that in mind, there should be a Gohin saving Legosi counter in this week's episode, because my god, that happens a lot. But Gohin shows up, and when he shows up, is badass. The God King, Akio Utsuka, the seiyuu who voices Gohin, is absolutely on fire. Not just here. Dude's been on fire like pretty much all season, because don't forget, he also voices Thorkel, so he's been like chief badass all season. And I mean, with Gohin, it's a little bit of like all for one, but not evil. Like he has that sort of like bass in his voice. Unfortunately, the easiest way I could describe it is it's sort of like Utsuka's impression of Solid Snake. Like I know I said that earlier, but it's kind of true, because again, it's a little bit of all for one, a little bit of Wamu, a little bit of everything in that performance. And every time he's on screen, it's just so freaking cool. Like the voice is so perfect for that character. I just love it to pieces. I think Utsuka does a phenomenal job. It's just, the dude's fucking badass. I don't know if I've said that yet. Their interaction, because even Gohin is like, listen, I'm all about saving people, but even I don't want to deal with these guys. And it really cements just how scary this crew they're going up against can be. If even Gohin doesn't want to mess with them, you know it's some serious shit, because he's out here in the black market trying his best to save people. And if even he's saying it ain't worth it, it's the equivalent of Batman telling you not to do something, not to go fight that guy. Like that's saying something. But of course Legosi's like, just kind of hint where to go, and you know what, and then eventually he realizes Gohin's not even going to tell him, so he's like, that's fine, I'll figure it out on my own, thanks anyway. He storms off, and of course he was gonna charge after him. Like, you knew from the jump that Gohin wasn't gonna let anything happen to Legosi, at least not if he can help it. And we'll get into like the actual one-on-one with Legosi in the first lion, because I have thoughts. But I wanted to finish up my thoughts on Gohin because, again, like I said, there should have been a Gohin saving Legosi counter, because in my notes I have Gohin rescues Legosi. Gohin rescues Legosi again. Dude rescues him again. Legosi, seriously. Like, it's just like, it just keeps going and going and going. And it happens once in the alley. It happens again during Legosi's one-on-one with the one lion. It happens again in the main hall, and then it happens again on the second floor. Like, it happens 4 times in the episode. And I probably even more than that, since he saves him twice in the main hall, or on the second floor, not the main hall. But yeah, it's a lot. Like, Gohin has to come to the rescue. And what I love about that is it still makes sense. It's not like Legosi's strength alone is going to save him, because he has no technique. He's not a fighter. So of course he's not going to be able to take on like a group of trained lions. He needs Gohin's help. Strength is huge, absolutely going to help for sure, but it's not going to get him through unscathed. He needed Gohin to help even the odds a little bit, and I loved that. I loved the action in this episode. I thought it was so well handled, because the animation's great, right? It's solid 3, like nobody does like 3D animation the way that Orange does. Eiji Inamoto is as far as I'm concerned, king of CG animation direction. Like the Inamoto is like an absolute mastermind of CG. Like he's able to help these animators make CG look not only like not janky, which is huge for most 3D CG, but he's able to make it look so, like, the way the camera whips around and the way the characters move and charge forward, it's full of energy. It doesn't feel like you're watching these 3D models bump into each other. You really feel like you're watching Legosi fight the Shishigumi, and it really moves with grace, I feel. There's moments where, yeah, in like not just this episode, but the show overall, where the characters do have a little bit of jank. You're gonna get that with 3D animation. Like, that's just, you have to accept that's where we're at currently. I feel like the height of 3D animation sits with Studio Orange. Like, that's where we're at currently. So you will have little moments where the characters look a little bit funny. But overall, in episodes like this, where they need the characters to move with real like passion and weight behind them, they do. And I will say, too, it's another credit to Eiji Inamoto, because they don't move like Land of the Lustrous. Land of the Lustrous had like these big sweeping motions, right? Like the characters are flipping and dancing around in the air, but here, it's not like that, because these characters can't do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're a little bit more grounded. The story's a little bit more like down to earth with not only its storytelling, but its action. So instead of like Legosi jumping around and flipping and doing all the kinds of tricks and like running on the wall or something like that, and like running on giant monsters' arms or something, it's not like that. Legosi, what he does instead is he sort of like runs into people and tackles them with his shoulder and then shoves them into walls or flips them over stairs, but it still moves with such impact that you really feel it. And you see that too with the scene of Gohin fighting the lions, where like they're cracking him in the nose because they know that that's where his soft spot is. And like that's where you hurt the panda, is in his nose. And I thought that was really friggin' smart. Not only was it smart in terms of action choreography, because like, of course, pandas like have a lot of nerves in their nose, so that's where they knew where to hit. But also, the animation just moves. It's really, really solid. And I have to give Inamoto and his crew, his team of animators, super big kudos, because I thought the action was great. I'm sure some folks will disagree with me. I know that there's some people who are just super anti 3D CG. I don't blame you. I understand why. But for me, personally, I thought this was stellar. And I loved seeing Gohin and Legosi have that moment where it's like, hey kid, go on ahead. I got this. Trust me, but don't die. And Legosi just looks at him. He's like, yeah, you too. And they charge off. I'm like, yeah, they had the badass, like, don't die. Or like, I ain't got time to bleed. Like, they had like the badass, like, I am badass, but also you are badass, and we are badass together. Like, that's, I should have titled this episode Badass. I'm not going to, because, you know, monetization's a thing. But that would have been if just badass. Like, not even Beastars, just badass. Because that's his episode. And I love that they have the action movie line of like, you go on ahead, I got this, and like, don't die. don't worry, I won't. You don't die either. And they storm off. It's just cool. But with the Gohin stuff out of the way, I do want to now address the Legosi fight, because Gohin's able to hold his own, right? Like, Gohin, you don't gotta worry about Gohin. Like you have to worry in the sense that he's a little bit outnumbered, so the fight's gonna be a little bit difficult. But we know that he can handle his own because he lives in the black market and he's done stuff similar to this before, probably not to this scale, but he's had to fight off other beasts, so he's at least capable of handling himself. Whereas Legosi, we've seen Legosi fight, sure, but he's fought against Bill, who wasn't trying to kill him, just subdue him. And he's fought against Louis, who, no offense, is a deer. Not that Louis not strong. Again, I mentioned earlier that Louis can hold his own for a stag, but he's not as strong as other carnivores. At least that's the vibe that I get. So, yeah, like, Legosi going up against one of the Shishigumi, this seemed like a losing battle, right? But the one area they messed up on is you shouldn't have brought up Haru. That was a bad idea, because the instant that the dude has Legosi at gunpoint, and he's like, oh, you came here to save the rabbit. Well, if you want to see her, unfortunately, I'm going to have to vomit her up, because that's the only way that you'll be able to see your precious little rabbit. And, of course, this drives Legosi insane, because he knows she's not dead. He refuses to believe that she's gone. So he does, like, the charging up thing, where he starts going, like beast mode. He goes full beast mode. And I like the charging up scene. I will say it is recycled animation, but because of how cool it looks, I don't really care. And I'm always going to be shocked at how Chikahiro Kobayashi is able to imbue Legosi with both this sort of naive innocence and this insane animalistic fury. He blends the two so well. And I mean, like, I guess I can kind of see it. He does play Sugimoto, who is sort of similar in the sense that he can turn on the rage when he needs to, but he's also sort of like a big teddy bear at other times. So I guess Sugimoto and Legosi do have quite a bit in common in terms of personality. But I feel like between the two, and this is saying something because I love Golden Kamui, but I do feel like Kobayashi's better role between the two is Legosi, only because Legosi's character has more to sink his teeth into, and pun very much intended. And I think this scene really exemplifies Kobayashi's skill as a seiyuu, because you need somebody who's capable of like flipping the switch from naive and sweet to angry and pissed right the hell off. And that is where Legosi sits in this moment, because Legosi, at first, he's still sort of naive. He's just like, hey man, just listen to me, like when he has his hands up. And that switch flips so fast into insane fury to the point where not only does he essentially go for the neck at one point, but he fires, like he makes the dude fire the gun and it skims this man's head, like straight up skins the lion's head and like just barely missing a headshot. And that shocked the hell out of me, only for that to be followed up with, you don't get to hurt Haru. Haru's my prey. And I got chills. I was like, what did you say? Even Legosi's like, whoa. What the hell did I just... It's like Legosi was on autopilot and his true emotions were coming out and he got to hear what he really thinks. And it took him a second to really be like, what did I just say? Holy crap. And in that moment, because he was shocked, he almost gets killed. Until Gohin again comes in with the save number 2 of the episode, I think, 2 out of 5. It's a lot. But yeah, that moment was wild, hearing Legosi say, Haru's my prey. That gave me chills. And again, it's a credit to Kobayashi, because he went from being naive and sweet to pissed off and angry to abject confusion and shock. Like the man runs the gambit this week. That like he deserves so much more credit. I better see Kobayashi show up in a ton more stuff. I'm just saying, the man's a genius. And moving on, we have the end of the episode, which basically leads us up to Haru writing her will, but it's in her head. And this is a moment where I had a lot of folks tell me last week that you should be thankful, the manga actually goes like really dark with this scene, and they took some stuff out that maybe I'm glad they did, and like some folks were like, I'm glad they did, but at the same time it sort of hurts the scene a little bit because you don't get like the gravitas of how dark that situation is, but like, you know, it's okay, I guess. And they put that back in. Although credit to Matsumi, because his direction in this moment was really well handled, because again, he doesn't necessarily show you how embarrassing it is for Haru to go through what she goes through. He doesn't like purposely show you how they're shaming her. That you get these sort of like flashes of like Haru in the spotlight, and then you see in the background like little glimpses of what's happening to Haru in reality while she's writing her will in her head, right? And again, it's a credit to Matsumi's direction, because in that scene, don't forget, it spotlights, and it's to really hammer home the whole theater aspect of the series, because again, this is a show about a group of theater kids. It's kind of important to remember that, because a lot of the motifs in the show, a lot of the way the flashbacks work, memories work, yada yada, it feels like set design. It feels like the spotlight reminds you of like a theater spotlight, and they really want to keep, or rather they really do a great job at keeping the theater motif running even when we're outside of the theater itself. And I have to give them kudos for that. Thought the direction in this episode was solid. Thought the direction in this scene in particular was fantastic. And thank you for not showing what happens in too much detail, because I can kind of infer a lot of what happens, or at least like it's just you do see like a decent amount of it, and what happens at like the rest of it you can sort of infer, because you do hear him talking, though it's muffled, so you can assume he's saying some like pretty gross shit to Haru, and it just made you want to see this lion get the shit kicked out of him, because it's like disgusting. And I think Itagaki is handling these more intense scenes with a level of grace that you just don't really see in other series. And yeah, again, like it never feels gratuitous what's happening. It feels wrong. Like you're supposed to be disgusted by it, and it's really well done. But what I loved is that Haru's writing this will, and we get to know a little bit more about her backstory and how Haru is, or rather why Haru is the way that she is, like why her personality is such that it is. And I thought that her backstory was really, really emotional, but at the same time, it adds up. Like that makes sense. Like the reason why she's sort of a promiscuous person is because that's when she feels like people take her more seriously and don't look at her as this vulnerable person. So she's actually using her sexuality to make herself feel stronger, which is admittedly a very interesting concept, and I would be curious to see how the show sort of plays that up going forward. And it's what I loved is that Haru as a character has really grown on me quite a bit, to the point where I was starting to think like Haru should stand up for herself. And then she does. She kicks the man's cane out of his hand, stands up and says like, I was writing my will in my head. So if you want me to be scared of you or ashamed, I'm not. So if you're gonna do this, let's do this. And I was so like, yeah, Haru! And then it immediately sort of falters when the guy's like, okay, well, I was like, if I'm not gonna eat hard meat, so I'll just tenderize you. I was like, ugh. Like this dude's gonna like chew on her ears essentially. I was like, ew, dude, that's fucked up. And like I feel like that's the whole episode is like any scene with Haru, you're like, that's really messed up. Like that's the point. And it's very dark, and that whole moment I'm like, you're just holding out for a hero in that moment. You're like, please Legosi, hurry up and show up. Boom. Legosi shows up. And I loved that. Like, I loved that he shows up just when she's thinking, like, this is it. And I loved that during her will as well, like Legosi's the one who reaches out to her, and she, like, Legosi isn't a memory that she's recalling, it's a memory that reaches out for her. She's recalling all the other memories of, like, all these other people, including Louis, by the way. But it's Legosi who stands out to her and, like, reaches out and grabs her hand, or at least, like, you know, in her head. And that I thought was fantastic. And it was finally time for Legosi to rescue somebody as opposed to be rescued. And that scene was great, because like that insert song comes on, you get all the feels, and it's just like this feel good moment of like Legosi coming to the rescue. He hands her his shirt, and he says like, sorry it smells, but just like wear the shirt, okay? Like you'll feel better if you put the shirt on. And then he's standing there ready to fight for Haru, and it's such a good scene. Like it's just this like heck yeah moment, like this like fuck yeah, like Legosi coming to the rescue. It's this like pump up moment, and I am curious about how this is gonna go down. I assume it's gonna be a pretty brutal drag out fight, since we know that the leader of the Shishigumi is probably pretty tough if he is like the leader. And what we've seen, he is older, so maybe he'll be a little bit slower. I'm not too sure. But I do think we're going to see, what I feel will happen is that we'll see like a decent standoff that'll ultimately maybe end with Gohin having to come in for the save again, because Legosi's not like totally evil. I do think like maybe he'll go, or I shouldn't say evil, but he's not totally cruel. I don't know if he'll actually go for the kill, and maybe that'll come back to bite him, and then Gohin will have to save him, and he'll probably berate him like, I told you to go for the neck. Like, I can see him like trying to go for the neck and just not being able to do it or something like that, because Legosi is a sweet boy. But if Legosi does kill this dude, I'm not gonna be upset about it. I do feel like in that moment it's kill or be killed, so I understand why he would do it if he felt like he had to. So I'm not, either way, I'm probably gonna be pretty satisfied with how next week's episode goes, because I am very curious to see how it goes. I just kind of like, at this point, the stress became hype, you know what I mean? So I am just sort of hyped to see what happens next week. At the same time, I am a little bit worried, because again, I really don't know where the show's gonna go. I hope nothing happens to Gohin. I hope nothing happens to Haru. I'm not worried about Legosi since he's the main character. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see what's gonna happen. I wonder if they're gonna out the Shishigumi and that's gonna like ruin the mayor or something. Like, that's my guess, is like Gohin and Legosi and Haru are gonna like out the Shishigumi as like this nefarious group, and that's gonna make the carnivores look bad, and Louis will have to step up to sort of like calm everyone down or something. I don't know. I'm mainly just worried for Gohin and Haru, since those two are the ones still in the line of fire, and they're characters that the story could continue on without them, because obviously without Legosi there is no story, so I'm not really worried about Legosi. But I am worried about the other two. I hope they get out okay. I'm very curious to see next week, and I thought this episode was friggin' really, really solid, just like really fantastic. Overall, if I had to give this week's episode a rating, I'm gonna say a hesitant S. It's like, it's not my favorite of the S tier episodes, but I'd feel weird not giving it an S, since it's everything that works about Beastars in a single episode. So I'd feel weird not giving it the highest rating that I could. It's not my favorite of the S tier episodes, but it's in that S tier. You know what I'm saying? And that's gonna do it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Before we go, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier: Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Sukochi, Tristan, and Verdun. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon. It is so appreciated. And if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But with all that said, everybody, I am gonna take off. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.